It's my pleasure to welcome back. I say back because we've already done an interview with Timmy Sean. I never know which way it goes backwards. I can't remember. I think he's the other guy. He's the guy with the cap. On his Boffo performance, redoing the Agatha All Along, a song from WandaVision, the Disney Plus TV show. We just talked about that separately. And if you've seen that, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch that after this. So there you go. So when we last spoke, we talked about that, and that was a lot of fun talking about that. But you've also got this other thing going on. It's like 2 for Tuesday, except it's Wednesday. So what are you going to do? This is it right here. Look at this: A Tale from the Other Side. It's like a Twilight episode gone awry. A rock and roll, power pop. I don't know, pop. It's all sorts of things. At Beach Boys, there's even a little Beach Boys thing in there too. I won't tell you where it is because that'll spoil it. But anyway, it's 20 songs with a couple of little recitations for quotes from horror stories, Edgar Allan Poe, and some other things. And it's really not like they do it anymore. It's like they used to make these things. And it shows a lot of hard work. I mean, it took you like 16 years to write this thing. And I bet it felt like 16 years recording it. But let's talk about how it came about. It's kind of, just to kind of give an overall thing. It's kind of a reflection on whether you had this in your head when you were writing some of the other songs earlier than this last year. It's kind of taken on this kind of feeling of the shape that we're in as human beings, having been locked down, and with the pandemic year going into its second year, and all of the different things that we've had to deal with, being stuck inside the house and wearing masks going out, and just thinking that, is anything going to be the same like it used to be? So it's kind of got that vibe to it. But I know that when you were putting it together, you were promoting it online, but you then wrote more songs to put into it before it was finally finished. So how did the idea first come to you to do this, and how did it change over time, really right up to the last minute? Because you were going to release this last November, right? And it came out just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So going into 2020, I was originally planning on putting an album out. I was going to put out some kind of album. I'm determined to get something out this year. I have a big pile of song ideas, couple that had lyrics, but for the most part, that comes last for me. It's like becomes homework, and I just like, all right, I have the song and a melody, and I'm singing gibberish on the demo, and like, let me sit down and actually figure out, okay, that's a good phrase, and then kind of write a song from there. So the pandemic hit, and like pretty quickly, once I realized, I was like, oh, this is going to be a while, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this time to finish up an album. So I started seeing what I had song-wise, going through the demos, and I had released a single in California about a year, maybe a year and a half before that, something like that. So that was kind of the jumping off point. And then I had a song called Fortune and Fame. And I was like, well, these kind of start a story. I'm like, these two right back to back. I'm like, kind of leads into the other. It's like both really over the top. One is about going to California, and like, somebody who like immediately makes it. It was kind of tongue in cheek when I wrote it, but then I'm like, well, if you kind of take it as like a story, and like it kind of goes into Fortune and Fame. So I was like, well, I have this song and I have this one, and then what if I put this one here? And I'm like, I think I could kind of piece together. I'm like, I always wanted to do, like, I always thought that's such a cool idea. Like, how do people do a rock opera? Like, how does somebody come up with like the story? Like, do they have like a big map of like, all right, this is the story I want to tell, and then they write the music for each song? And like, for me, I kind of had the songs and song ideas there for a lot of them, and I was like, all right, well, if I kind of piece this together here, and then this song could become this, and then this, and then I started seeing a story. And then as current events were happening, it was like, oh, I could write about this. Oh, this is something else I could write about. Okay. And then I was like, well, I don't really want to make this literally about, like, as very specifically okay, this is 2020 and this is the lockdown and this is the virus. So I was like, how can I get into that without being completely literal? So I was like, I kept saying, like, this is like a horror movie. I'm like, this is like what we're living through. This is like this is like a monster movie or something. So I was like, okay, the virus became a monster. And I was like, all right, let me use that. So I started getting that together. And then it was like, all right, well, okay, what if this was kind of like a Wizard of Oz, where the story starts off and it's just kind of a small story, and then at some point it gets kind of like hyper real, and they kind of leave it ambiguous whether or not it's a dream or not, or whether it's like, okay, so this person goes to California, becomes a star, all this stuff. So I just kind of started laying it down song by song, and then I had this pile of songs that I just started writing lyrics, and it was just like, all right, for weeks I just was like, all right, let me try to write an outline. Okay, scratch that off. That doesn't really work. This one. And then I had kind of the framework by like summer. I kind of had the framework of an album. And I was like, all right, I think there's something here. But then it was like just kind of moving songs around. And I was like, all right, these songs work in order, but it's too boring right here. Like this song has no energy. So like that one's out. Let me write a new song. All right, She's a Monster. So I wrote that in like the summer. And I was like, that kind of pulled the whole thing together. And I was really doing that until, I was originally going to release it because I was like, this was in summer, and I'm like, November seems really far off, but like there's a Friday the 13th. There's a Friday the 13th in there, and that would be perfect. So, okay, so let me do that. And as I was getting closer, I'm like, I'm not close to being done. I'm pulling this song out, I'm adding this one in. So I was like, all right, anybody who pre-ordered, I'll give them the first half of the album, because now it's ballooned up to like 20 tracks. And I kind of like the idea of that. It was like, all right, it's 2020, it's loosely, it's kind of a allegory about 2020, 20 tracks. Perfect. All right. So
Right.
by that point, it was like, all right, maybe there's a track that ends it called Midnight. Maybe I'll do it midnight on New Year's. Missed that deadline. So eventually, that one's out. But yeah, so if I just, in December, I was still like pulling songs out and like, I need something better here to end the album. So so it was just a 10-month process basically of just like, no, that's not good enough. I like that song, but that doesn't really work in the story. Okay, this one. And then by the end, it was like, oh, I kind of have a full story in my head of like how this whole thing flows, but it was just kind of rough draft. And then peeling the onion, I guess.
Well, the onion is peeled in quite a delectable way, I have to tell you. 20 tracks on the album, and basically there was a character that you had when you were in Loser, right, called Guy Scorpio. And so the main character of A Tale from the Other Side is Guy. Basically the idea is that Guy is in love with his girlfriend, but she wants something that he does. He wants to go to California and be a big star, and she wants something else, so they part. But really, through the whole rock opera or pop rock opera, whatever you want to call it, pop rock opera. It's a opera. Basically, he realizes that the world is sort of enclosing on him, or on everybody, really. And he's seeing the forest for the trees, but how do you fight monsters? I mean, you have to have like a Marvel cast behind you in order to fight monsters, I guess. And then in the end, it all comes together, and he realizes in the last actual song, he realizes what he has and that he has to keep it, because without love, there's nothing. So that, I mean, I don't mean to trivialize it and put it in, but that's basically the idea.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It starts off with this ominously sounding a quote from Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death. Anybody who's read Edgar Allan Poe knows, where you are when you hear this. It's about midnight descending on the world, and as a result, the music ceased. I love that word. It's great. It's so much better than stopped or I couldn't hear it anymore. Ceased is like, that's the end of that. Now what do I do? It's kind of like the end. And then it goes into a song. It's really kind of like yin yang. It's a 1-2 punch, but from different sides of the field. You've got that kind of scary opening, and then the college year is where you're saying, well, it's sort of like the old line, "We'll always have Paris," but in your case, it's "We'll always have our college year," when everything was great. But it wasn't it's not real. It's college, and then you have to grow up and go out and get a job or do something else or whatever, wherever it takes you. Then they break up, and then it's in California where Guy goes to the left coast to seek fame and fortune and fame. And lo and behold, the next song is called Fortune and Fame, which Timmy was mentioning earlier, that song. So along the way through this tale, he has to fight the forces of evil that are beating down on him. And he's realizing that being a star isn't all it's cracked up to be if you don't have support. It's very nice to go, hey, my lovely, adoring public. But when you close the door to your house, it's just you and the ice maker, so you kind of have to do something else. There's a great line, a partial line in the song, in Fortune and Fame, where he says, lonely mornings without you, I close my eyes to fall back to dream about you. Because dreaming is safe, unless it turns into a nightmare, which some of this story is kind of a waking nightmare. Then in She's a Monster, which Timmy also mentioned, a storm is approaching, ready to wreak havoc. But like a lot of things that are sung about in this opera, are you trying to be metaphorical most of the time, or what?
Yeah. I mean, I am. It's it's easier for me, at least when I'm writing, to not be like, she's a virus. It's like, all right, she's a
virus. Oh, no.
Like, I mean, it's a virus. You know what I mean? Like, but that's what I'm thinking. Right? And I'm like, all right, like, because like the lyrics, it makes it easier for me to just think about it in that way. So I just feel like I don't know. It's probably better for listener too to not be singing "She's a virus."
That's right. But a good-looking virus, nonetheless.
Yeah, she's a smoking hot virus.
There's a song. Why didn't you put that on there? Smoking Hot Virus, track 28. Maybe not. There are little points during the whole program, little lines which really point to the way it ends up. I mean, you really set up the ending well. In the other side, he realizes there's a way to make things right. And he's got that line where he sings, if I could make it back to you, I might finally be at peace. But the thing that I love about that line is the word might. It's not I will be at peace, because in the last song on the album, he tries to have it both ways just in case it doesn't work out. Right. So it's kind of interesting the way you play it. You leave a lot of it up to the listener.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I took from like listening to classic rock opera, like during the making of this, everything from, listening to Pink Floyd and The Who, and then all through like Green Day and like, the big ones over like the last 50 years. And I was like, they spell out a lot, but they leave a lot up to the, like, don't over explain it, like, having what's in your head and then, lay out the story, but like people are going to take from it what they take, which is great. Like, I think that's what makes it, that's what people want to, pull from it. So hopefully it resonates with people, but it's not like, I like the idea of some things being ambiguous. Like in my head, there's like a movie, like in my head, it's like through the whole thing, it's like, okay, and there's this character and there's this one. But it's like also making a rock opera during the pandemic when it's just yourself. It's like, all right, I kind of need to write it from this one person's point of view. Otherwise, like, I'm not going to sing the female parts. Like if it was a musical, you'd be like, all right, this person gets this song and this person and this, but
right.
So yeah, so it was that was the one thing that I was trying to figure out. Like, okay, it's a completely solo album. Like I'm playing pretty much everything on the album, singing all the parts, but I'm also trying to like get into like a musical thing where normally it's 10 different characters all singing different parts. But yeah, so hopefully by the end of it, people have like something in their head that maybe it's not exactly what I have in my head, but I think that's for the better, hopefully.
Well, you talk about being ambiguous. It's interesting because there are a lot of lines like that, like this one from Come Back Alive. You say, and when you open your eyes, the world you left behind will come alive again. So that sounds good, but what world is he singing about? Is he singing about the world where everything was great back in college, the college year, or when they got out to when he got out to California, or is it another permutation of that? Another line in there: "I was lost, but now you have found me. I've returned. If you will have me." If maybe she doesn't want to do that. Maybe she, maybe she's a little scared of. I mean, there's a monster going through town. Was that me? I don't know. So I like the ambiguity of it. It makes it interesting. Makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And all along, by the way, just so you think this isn't like some Verdi opera, or anything like that. It's rock, it's pop, it's power pop. I hate to typify it with a word, but there's some Beach Boys in there. Like I said, that's a nice little surprise. And great harmonies and melodies. The whole thing is just superb all the way through. It's especially if you're like an old guy like me, you'd say this is the way they used to make them. So, and he made a great album here, and I hope everybody's listening to it and going crazy. I mean, on his website, on your website, you list some of the people that maybe you're paying homage to, that you like, and you say the Beatles, like duh, of course the Beatles. Look behind, looking back, the Beatles, the drumhead right there. Yes, exactly.
Right next to the other side poster. Yeah, right now.
Right, exactly, right. And why would that be there exactly? So Beatles, ELO, Weezer. There's a lot of Weezer, and there's a lot of Weezer kind of stuff in here too, I think. I mean, the good Weezer.
They were like a big one for me. Like when I was in high school, like I can kind of map out, like I was in elementary school when the Blue album came out, like Buddy Holly. So I was like a kid and I was like, Buddy Holly, this is great. And I grew up, my father and uncles used to play Buddy Holly. And then middle school was like kind of angsty middle school, like Pinkerton came out. And then my senior year of high school, the Green album came out. So it was like, I can really track the first three Weezer albums. Like I followed them all along, but like those were like big parts of, coming of age. And this album originally kind of started off as like, maybe I'll just do a self-titled, there's a track on the album that became Show on the Road. And there was like that song and Over and Over Again were like the first two. And I was like, opening two songs of an album, I'm just going to make a 10 song. I'll do it self-titled, do like a Weezer album. And that was kind of like the first, this was even before the songs of the week. I had those two song ideas at like the end of 2014. And it was like, I'm gonna make it like a super straight ahead rock, no frills, just kind of Weezer old school album. And then it became a 20-song rock opera.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Weezer because I've been listening to the new Weezer album, which I don't care what anybody says. I think it's fantastic.
I really like it.
And the whole thing's like 28 minutes or 26 minutes. It's orchestrated. It doesn't sound like Weezer at all. I don't know what it is, but it's very like Baroque, classical almost. It's a piece of genius, really. I really love it. But I think even Rivers Cuomo would have said, no, I can't stop at 10 songs. We have to keep going. Because if you do a 26 or 28 minute album, it's the best of Roger Miller, and then that's kind of the end of it right there. Because his greatest hits album on Smash Records, the first one was like 26 minutes or something ridiculous. Because all the songs are like a minute 20, dang me, got to take a rope and hang me from the highest tree. Boom, next song, King of the Road. It's just and I love that stuff, by the way. I'm not making fun of it. But also Timmy loves horror movies like Stephen King, TV shows like The Sopranos. Who doesn't love The Sopranos? I love The Sopranos. And all that stuff. So basically it's like a pop culture fest. There's a little bit of all of it. And it's like also Ben Folds, he puts down here, and I don't hear Ben Folds in there, maybe a little bit of the keyboard occasionally, but it's like, I interviewed Ben Folds one time and he said, who I really love the piano playing of? And he says, Joni Mitchell. And I said, Joni Mitchell? I don't hear that. He goes, well, you're not supposed to hear it. He says, it's in there, but you won't hear it. So these are all the things that goes through an artist's head. It all comes out in the end the way it comes out. It's interesting with all of those things there. Um, the other thing about this project is it's not just, the CD you put into the player and you lay back on the couch and listen, or play air guitar, whichever you like. Maybe you play air guitar and lay on the couch. I don't know at the same time. But it comes in the packaging is really great, and I happen to have some of it right here. How about that? Wonder how that happened. There's the CD. See, and it opens up, and there's a little some text in there. He'll tell you all about it. And then, as if that weren't enough, it comes in this. I can't do it like you do. This is an old style VHS box, complete with the legend at the top. What side are you on? And some things here. It says horror stickers. Be kind. Rewind. I'm glad we're not in those days anymore, because I never rewound anything. And then the little story of the album and all the credits, and see, just like a movie. See, like right there on the bottom. So that was a stroke of genius. How'd you come up with that? It's a great idea.
I mean, I was trying to come up with something different for the packaging. Like, that was my first thought. Was like, I feel like nowadays it's like so many people stream. Like, I go out and buy Blu-rays and CDs a lot, but like, if there's something extra, if it's something cool, I'll be way more apt to be like, I'm going to put down $10 or $15 or 20, whatever it is, for something if it's cool. So I just was kind of trying to think of what would be the coolest thing to put it out. So originally I was like, maybe I'll put it in like a DVD case, because that already has the CD. You stick a CD in the DVD spot and you can kind of make it look like a VHS. I was like, all right. I'm like, what would actually be cool is if there was any company out there that like is making VHS. So I was trying to figure out the measurements and be like, I wonder if I got the CD in a wallet that would slide inside, and I found a company out of Canada that still makes VHS sleeves. So I ordered them. I did the design, and I came up with that poster. I had did the artwork for it and stuff, and I had an idea. I was like, I want it to be like an old school horror Stephen King poster that has like, there's clues to it. Like, there's a song Hawaiian Shores, so there's like some palm trees in the background of the art, and there's Red-Eyed Army is part of the character. So there's like glowing zombie. So there's little elements of all the songs in the artwork. And I just figured, vinyl is so expensive. I would love to do a vinyl run of it at some point, but to make it work, it was just so expensive. Like, to have some kind of artwork, like a VHS is, completely different. I'm like, I haven't seen anybody that's done that. I'm like, I feel like people get a kick out of it. It fits the vibe of the album, and so people really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I want to show you folks how deep he got into the details. You see on the cover there, you see the skull has red eyes. He asked on Facebook whether people like the red eyes or the blue eyes, and the red ones won.
You know what's funny? It's actually, it goes from, it was solid red or blue, and if you zoom in, it goes from blue and fades to red in the middle of it. So I ended up
right, the edges.
I ended up going right, because people are like, oh, the red jumps out too much. Oh, the blue goes this way. Oh, this. I was like, what about this, everyone? See, red and blue can come together, and we'll meet in the middle.
Red and blue together again. And also, this is good too. Hi-fi stereo. Geez, I don't even remember those days. All I remember is surround sound at this point. That goes back to like 1938 or something. And it's VHS and everything. And also there are stickers. You get a whole mess of stuff with it. So the experience is kind of wide. I should also mention that like every other recording artist in the universe, Timmy Sean did not fall from out of the sky. He also has another gig, which unfortunately the pandemic put the brakes on. He plays with his family in a band called the Mahoney Brothers. Where'd they get that name from? The Mahoney Brothers. And they play all different kinds of music in there. Don't they also, isn't there a Beatles show too? And
so my father and uncles, they started off just doing like some covers in the 70s. And then they were playing a club in the late 70s, and they were like, hey, can you guys do a night of like one act? And they were like, we could probably do the Beatles. And then 40 something years later, they've been doing a Beatles show that whole time. So they're like the longest running Beatles tribute show, and they were like understudies on the Beatles, the Beatlemania show on Broadway that ran in like the 1980-ish. And then in the 80s, they started doing a show called Jukebox Heroes Live, which is like a tribute show to like a number of different acts. So it's like my one uncle will come out and do Billy Joel, you know, my dad will come out and do Neil Diamond, and then the next one will like run off stage and do. So like my first gig in like high school, like my summer was like spent on the road. I'd go out with them and I'd drum or play guitar or bass or whatever they needed. And yeah, so I still fly back pretty regularly, especially in the summer. Normally I'll go back and kind of do their like summer tour with them. And then if they have like a fly-in gig here and there. So like, yeah, so I haven't seen them. The last time I saw them was a gig in Florida that we did that was just over a year. It was like March 1st or February 29th or something. So that was the last time I saw my whole family, which is like, I usually see them. It's great because I can go back and gig. And it's like, oh, I have some work. This is great. And then on top of it, I get to see my whole family. So but yeah, this is the longest I've gone without seeing anyone. So they, knock on wood, my grandparents are still around, and they just got their first vaccine shot the other day, and my dad and my stepmom just got theirs. So good. Hopefully by summer I can go back. Maybe I'll have my own and safely be performing some shows with them again. So.
And not only that, as if that weren't enough, because already I'm exhausted from everything you do. But you also have a group called Sir Video, which is like a techno pop side project. Because like, you know, there's 45 minutes out of every Wednesday that he could be doing that, which is also very good too. And you know, you can get all of this stuff on Bandcamp. You can get Mahoney Brothers stuff too. See, get the whole thing right there. Mahoney Brothers albums, and Timmy's been restoring those. And Sir Video, some great tracks used to play on Pure Pop Radio. Very good stuff. And then of course the songs of the week, which is like 9,000 songs it seemed. Back in 2015 that are just great. So all that stuff's available. You can just see that it's not just the one thing with Timmy Sean. It's a lot of things because there's a lot of sides to every artist. They, you know, an artist who just says the one thing, it kind of gets boring after a while. What else can they do? And he constantly proves that there's a lot of else. You know, hence the Beach Boys thing in one of the songs on The Tale from the Other Side, which is really, really good. So now that this album is out, it seems like a ridiculous question to ask. Yes, it's a little bit ridiculous, but we talked in the other interview about the Marvel show doing rocked up versions of other theme songs. But even your own stuff. I mean, are you thinking about another album project, or are you just going to let it sit for a while?
You know, I feel like I have kind of a bad habit of like, as soon as I finish something, I move on to the next thing and don't promote it. So I made like a conscious effort of like, you know what, I want to sit with this album for a bit because I'm really proud of it. I have other ideas for this album as far as like videos and putting some like, you know, maybe some kind of live performance thing where I have an idea of basically putting on kind of regular shows where I'd be playing all the instruments, but like do each instrument in one take. So you're actually kind of watching. It's not just like, all right, I went in the studio and then I'm miming to something. So I'm trying to figure out some logistics on that of like maybe putting some shows together where it's a mix of songs from the album, a mix of songs from songs of the week, and maybe do a Sir Video day and do some covers and so because I've kind of steered away from doing this like strumming an acoustic on live stream. Like there's people who do that great. I just find it boring just to sit and play acoustic myself. Like I like playing with a band, whether it's myself playing the other instruments or a band. So so I think that's probably going to be the next thing, is trying to figure out some video things for the album, but maybe try to tie everything together before there's actual live gigs again.
Or maybe it could be like, you know, in a year or two, where is Guy now? You know, what other mess has he gotten himself into?
There are songs that didn't make the album that I think are like really strong songs that I feel like deserve to be on there, but they just didn't kind of either fit the story or just. I had one song that closed the album, and then it was like, all right, well, there's a couple slow ones in a row. And I'm like, so I have started thinking of like, oh yeah, you know, another tale from the, you know, or more tales from the other side, you know, some kind of sequel, but let this one sit for a little bit first.
Well, you got to start. You got to start somewhere. So here's what you got to do: as soon as this interview's over, and then watch the WandaVision one also, and then I'll let you go. Then go to Timmy Sean's Bandcamp page, and there's all sorts of stuff there. This that we've been talking about. Look at that. See, there you go. Those, and there are different packages with different T-shirts, so you can have your choice of T-shirts. Who gives you a choice of T-shirts? It's like the guy's thinking of good things there. And then Mahoney Brothers stuff and Video and his solo stuff. There's a plethora of material there, and it's all great. And you're one of my favorite musician guys, and I'm so glad I was introduced to your music to begin with. And you know,
Thanks
keep
so much,
doing
man.
it,
man. And thanks for all the, you know, you wrote literally every week about the songs of the week thing. I mean, I really, over the years, I really appreciate everything that you've done.
Sure,
So
sure, no problem. I enjoyed doing it, and you'll enjoy listening to this stuff. So go get it. Thank you, Timmy Sean, for being here today, and best of luck with this tremendous record, A Tale from the Other Side. That's my horror voice. Not very good, but anyway. Thanks a lot for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.